Tonight, we are traveling to a world of steam and smoke, of iron and of coal, a time of great invention and profound change, known as the Industrial Revolution. It was an age that reshaped landscapes and remade societies, building the foundations of the modern world. But we will not be focusing on the grand inventors or the powerful industrialists. Our journey tonight is a much quieter one. We will be walking alongside the smallest figures of this era, the ones whose stories are often lost in the shadows of the great machines they served. We are going to explore what life was like for a child miner in the 1800s. Imagine a life lived in near constant twilight, a world where the sun was a rare visitor, a life measured not in hours, but in the number of carts filled, the number of doors opened in the deep, dark tunnels beneath the earth. This is not a story of high drama or adventure. It is a story of routine, of repetition, of the quiet, steady rhythm of a life of labor, begun long before childhood was truly over. So let your eyelids grow heavy. Let the gentle murmur of our story be a soft blanket for your mind. We will not rush. We will simply imagine ourselves into this distant world, exploring the small, sensory details of a day in the life of one of these young workers. Let the sounds of the past lull you, and let the quiet telling of this story guide you toward a deep and restful sleep. Our journey begins as their day always did, in the deep, quiet darkness, long before the rising of the sun. If you enjoy these journeys into the past, I'd really appreciate a quick like, or even a subscribe. It helps our small community of quiet history lovers grow more than you know. I'm always curious where you all are listening from, so feel free to drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. It's fascinating to see our global community connecting through these stories. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine yourself awakening not to the gentle light of dawn, but to a profound and familiar darkness. The air in the small room is cold, carrying a damp chill that seems to emanate from the stone floor and the thin, grimy walls. You are curled on a simple straw-stuffed mattress, a palliasse, that you share with two of your siblings. The warmth from their bodies is a small comfort against the cold. The mattress lies on the floor in the corner of the room, and this room is not just a bedroom, it is the entire home. It is a single space for living, sleeping, and eating. The scent of the room is a complex and constant companion. There is the dusty, slightly sweet smell of the straw beneath you, the faint, ever-present odor of coal smoke that has seeped into the very fabric of the cottage, the smell of unwashed bodies, and the lingering aroma of last night's meager supper of boiled potatoes and onions. It is a smell of poverty, a smell of close quarters, a smell of a life lived on the very edge of subsistence. You are 8 years old. Your name might be Thomas or Billy, or perhaps Jack, a simple common name for a simple common boy. You are awakened not by a parent's gentle call, but by a sound from the outside world. It is the first clatter of hobnailed boots on the cobblestones of the narrow lane outside your cottage. It is the sound of the first shift of men heading towards the colliery, the coal mine that is the heart and soul of this town. Soon, another sound joins it. The high, piercing whistle from the pit head, a long, mournful cry that cuts through the darkness, signaling the start of another working day. You do not need to be told to get up. The routine is etched into you as deeply as the coal dust is etched into the lines on your father's hands. You slide out from under the single, heavy wool blanket, careful not to wake your younger sister who is still sleeping soundly. The floor is cold and rough against the soles of your bare feet. You do not own shoes for walking, only the worn, heavy boots you will put on for the mine. Your home is a 2 up, 2 down, a standard miner's cottage, owned by the company that owns the mine. But your family is large, and your father's wages are small, so you rent only the downstairs portion. The single room is sparsely furnished. A rough-hewn wooden table and 2 benches stand in the center. A small, inefficient iron stove is set into the hearth, its fire long dead, radiating a stony cold. In the corner, a bucket of water from the communal pump sits with a thin ladle. This is your entire world outside of the mine. You shiver in the cold morning air. Your clothes are laid out on one of the benches where you left them last night. They are not much. A pair of thick, coarse canvas trousers, patched at the knees with scraps of a different material. A flannel shirt, thin from countless washings, its original color long lost to a uniform shade of grayish-brown. Your father is already awake, a large, silent shadow moving in the dim light coming from the single, small window, a light that is not yet dawn, but the faint grey pre-glow that precedes it. He does not speak. Mornings are not for conversation. They are for the quiet, methodical preparation for the descent. He is pulling on his own mining clothes, his pit gear. They are heavier than yours, stained black with a mixture of coal dust, sweat, and oil. He coughs, a deep rattling sound from his chest. The miner's cough that every man in the town seems to have. It is a sound as familiar as the pit whistle. Your older brother, who is 12, is also getting ready. He is a hurrier, and his job is to pull the heavy carts of coal through the narrow tunnels. He is already strong, his shoulders and back thickened with muscle from the punishing work. He glances at you, a silent acknowledgement. There is a bond between you, a shared understanding of the day that lies ahead. You sit on the bench to pull on your boots. They are your most important possession. They are heavy, ill-fitting hand-me-downs from your brother, the leather stiff and cracked. You stuff a bit of rag into the toes to make them fit better. The laces are frayed and you tie them with care. These boots will protect your feet from the sharp rocks and the constant dampness of the mine floor. Once you are all ready, your father, your brother, and you, there is a moment of quiet stillness. Your mother is now awake, watching you from the mattress. She does not say be careful. The dangers are too constant, too immense to be named. To speak of them would be to give them power. Instead, she gives a simple, slight nod. It is a gesture of farewell, a silent prayer, a ritual repeated in every cottage, every morning. Your father opens the wooden door, and a rush of cold, damp air fills the room. You step out into the pre-dawn darkness. The lane is no longer silent. It is filled with the shuffling, clattering sounds of dozens of men and boys, all walking in the same direction. They are shadows in the gloom, their faces pale and tired, their shoulders stooped. The only sound of their voices is a low murmur, a collection of coughs and grunts. The air outside smells different from the air in the cottage. It is thick, with the sulphurous scent of burning coal from the coke ovens near the pit head. It is a sharp, acrid smell that stings your nostrils and catches in the back of your throat. It is the smell of the town, the smell of its industry, the smell of its reason for being. You join the slow procession, a river of humanity flowing towards the mine. You walk beside your father, his large frame a comforting presence in the dark. Your brother walks on your other side. You do not hold hands. You are a working boy now, and such gestures of childhood are left behind. But you walk close enough to feel the warmth from their bodies. The town is built on a hillside, and the cottages cling to it in steep, narrow terraces. The lanes are unpaved, a mixture of mud and coal slag that is treacherous in the dark. You have learned to walk it by feel, to know where the loose stones are, where the puddles of stagnant water gather. As you walk, you see other children, boys your age, some even younger. A small boy of 6, his face still round with the last vestiges of babyhood, trudges along, holding tightly to his father's hand. He is a trapper, and this will be his first week at the mine. His job will be to sit in the pitch-black darkness of a tunnel for 12 hours, opening and closing a ventilation door for the coal carts to pass. You remember your own first day as a trapper, the overwhelming, absolute blackness, the feeling of being utterly alone in the heart of the earth. You see girls too, older girls in their early teens. They are not going into the mine. They are heading for the pit brow, where they will spend the day sorting the coal, their hands picking through the sharp rock and slag in the open air, their faces exposed to the biting wind and the constant, thick dust. Their future is just as prescribed as yours. The walk to the pit head takes about 15 minutes. As you get closer, the sounds become louder, the smells stronger. You hear the rhythmic hiss and clank of the great steam engine that powers the winding gear, the machine that will lower you into the depths. It is a monstrous, breathing thing, the iron heart of the mine. You see the glow of the furnaces, casting a hellish, orange light against the dark, oppressive sky. You arrive at the pit head, a wide, open area of black, trodden earth surrounding the main shaft. Here the river of shadows converges. Men and boys are gathering, waiting for their turn to descend. There is no cheerful banter, no camaraderie, just a weary, resigned silence. The overseer, a stout man with a grim face, stands near the shaft, a list in his hand. He shouts out names, and small groups of miners step forward. You huddle with your father and brother, waiting. The wind is sharper here on the exposed hillside. It whips at your thin shirt, and you cross your arms over your chest for warmth. You look up at the head frame, the tall wooden structure that stands over the mouth of the pit. It is a stark, black skeleton against the slowly lightening grey sky. The sky is the colour of ash. You know that you will not see it again until this colour returns in the evening. Your entire day, your entire working life, will be spent without the sun. Finally, the overseer calls your father's name. It is your turn. You walk towards the shaft, a gaping black hole in the ground. The air that rises from it is cool and damp, and it carries a unique smell, the smell of the deep earth. It is a smell of wet stone, of coal, of stagnant water, and of something else, something ancient and still. You step onto the crude wooden platform, a cage, along with your father, your brother, and 3 other miners. The cage is open to the elements, with just a single iron bar to hold onto. The overseer slams a gate shut, and for a moment, you are suspended there, between the world of faint light and the world of absolute darkness below. Then, with a sudden stomach-lurching jolt, the cage begins its descent. The small patch of grey sky above you shrinks with alarming speed, and you are plunged into a profound and total blackness. The only sound is the rattling of the chain, the rush of air past your ears, and the steady, rhythmic dripping of water down the shaft walls. Your morning is over, your workday has begun, and for the next 12 hours, the sun will be nothing more than a distant, forgotten memory. You are in the belly of the earth, a small, silent cog in the great grinding machine of the industrial age. The descent is a journey into a different state of being. The small, square patch of grey sky, your last connection to the world above, shrinks to a tiny star and then vanishes completely. You are enveloped in a blackness so absolute that it feels like a physical substance. It presses against your eyelids. For a moment, all other senses are heightened. You feel the slight sway of the cage, the vibration of the chain running through the winding gear far above you. You hear the rush of air, a constant, sighing whisper that seems to be the earth's own breath. And you hear the water. It is a steady, rhythmic dripping, a sound that will become the metronome of your day. It runs down the walls of the shaft, and you can feel the fine, cold spray of it on your face and hands. The air changes as you descend. The sharp, sulphurous smell of the pit head is left behind, replaced by a cooler, cleaner, and more ancient scent. It is the smell of damp earth, of wet stone, of minerals that have not seen the light of day for millions of years. It is a smell without life, without sun. It is the pure, fundamental scent of the deep places of the world. Your father places a heavy, reassuring hand on your shoulder. It is a gesture that needs no words. It says, "I am here, be still." You grip the cold iron bar in front of you, your knuckles white. The cage does not descend smoothly. It shudders and jerks, dropping in small, unnerving increments as the steam engine above pays out the chain. With each jolt, your stomach seems to rise and fall. Other men in the cage are silent, their faces invisible in the profound dark. They are accustomed to this daily passage between worlds. For them, it is as routine as walking down a lane. But for you, at 8 years old, a part of you is always terrified. A part of you always wonders if the chain will hold. The journey down seems to last an eternity. You pass different levels of the mine, dark openings that flash by in the gloom, unseen but felt as a slight change in the air pressure. Finally, with a last jarring shudder, the cage slows and then stops. The sudden cessation of movement is almost as startling as the descent itself. The silence that follows is deep and profound, broken only by the constant, gentle dripping of water. A faint, flickering light appears. A man, the onsetter, slides open the gate of the cage. He holds a safety lamp, and in its dim, caged glow, his face is a mask of shadows and highlights. His skin pale, almost translucent, from a life lived underground. "Right then, out with you," he says, his voice flat and toneless, echoing slightly in the vast space. You step out of the cage and onto the floor of the mine. You are at the pit bottom, the main artery of the colliery. The space is much larger than you would imagine. The roof is high here, supported by massive timbers, thick as tree trunks, that glisten with moisture in the lamplight. A set of iron rails, just like the ones used by the steam trains on the surface, runs from the mouth of the shaft and disappears into the blackness of a wide tunnel. The darkness here is not absolute. It is a world of flickering, moving lights. Every man and boy carries a lamp, their small individual flames creating shifting pools of illumination. Figures move in and out of the light, their forms indistinct, their faces momentarily lit and then swallowed again by the gloom. The effect is dreamlike, a slow, silent dance of shadows. The air is cool and still, and the silence is a living presence. The cacophony of the surface world, the wind, the shouts, the machinery, is gone. Down here, sounds are small, isolated and significant. You can hear the distant, rhythmic tap-tap-tap of a pickaxe against a coal seam, a sound that travels for miles through the solid rock. You can hear the low creak of the roof timbers, a constant, gentle reminder of the immense weight of the earth and rock pressing down from above. Your father collects his own safety lamp from a small brick-lined alcove. He checks the flame, making sure it burns a steady, clear yellow. If the flame were to grow longer and turn blue, it would be a sign of fire damp, the invisible, explosive methane gas that is the miner's most feared enemy. The lamp is not just a tool for sight, it is a tool for survival. A new figure approaches, the deputy or overman. He is the man in charge of this section of the mine. He carries a thicker stick than the other men and has an air of authority. He consults a slate he holds in his hand. He speaks to your father in a low voice. Their conversation about tonnages and the state of the coalface too complex for you to follow. Your father nods, then turns to you. "Thomas," he says, his voice softer now that you are away from the noise of the cage. "You'll go with Mr. Roberts. Do as he says, be a good lad." He gives your shoulder a final squeeze. Then he and your older brother turn and begin their walk, their lamps bobbing in front of them, down the main tunnel towards the distant coalface where they will work. You watch their small lights shrink until they are indistinguishable from the other faint glimmers in the oppressive darkness. And then they are gone. You are alone. Mr. Roberts, the deputy, now turns his attention to you. He is not a cruel man, but he is not a kind one either. He is a man with a job to do, and you are a small part of that job. "Come on, lad," he says, his voice impatient. "We've got to get you to your door. The hurriers will be starting soon." He leads you away from the relative bustle of the pit bottom into a much narrower tunnel. Here, the roof is lower. You are a small boy, but even you have to stoop your head slightly. The walls are no longer supported by massive timbers, but by smaller, rougher props. The floor is uneven, a mixture of mud and sharp shale that crunches under your boots. The only light is the single lamp held by the deputy, which he holds high. It casts a long, dancing shadow of the two of you on the tunnel walls. The journey to your workstation is long and confusing. You walk through a labyrinth of tunnels, each one looking identical to the last. The deputy seems to navigate by instinct, by some internal map that you cannot comprehend. The air grows warmer and more stagnant the deeper you go. The silence becomes more profound. Here, you can no longer hear the distant tapping of the pickaxes, only the sound of your own footsteps and the deputy's heavy breathing. And always, the steady drip, drip, drip of water seeping through the rock from the world above. It is a sound that will come to haunt your sleep. You pass other children at their posts. A boy, perhaps a year older than you, sits on a small wooden stool in a tiny alcove, his head bowed, his lamp on the floor beside him. He is a greaser, and his job is to apply fat to the axles of the coal tubs as they pass. He doesn't look up as you go by. He is lost in his own small, dark world. Finally, the deputy stops. You are at a junction where a smaller tunnel branches off from the one you are in. A heavy wooden door is set into the rock, blocking the smaller tunnel. This door is a crucial part of the mine's ventilation system. It directs the flow of fresh air from the main shaft to the distant coal faces where the men are working, and it prevents the buildup of dangerous gases. "This is it," the deputy says. "This is your door." He hands you a piece of rope that is tied to the door. When you hear a hurrier coming with his tub, you pull the rope. You open the door. You let him through. Then you let it shut. Make sure it shuts tight. Do you understand? The air has to flow the right way. You nod, your eyes wide in the gloom. "You don't get a lamp," the deputy continues matter-of-factly. "We can't spare them for trappers. And you don't need one. There's nothing to see." He places your meager lunch, a lump of bread wrapped in a piece of cloth, on a small flat rock beside the door. "Don't fall asleep," he warns. "If you miss a tub, you'll have the hurrier to answer to, and me." And with that, he turns and walks away, his lamp a retreating star of hope. You watch it disappear around a bend in the tunnel, and then you are plunged into the most complete and utter darkness you have ever known. The descent in the cage was a temporary state of blindness. This is your reality for the next 12 hours. You are 8 years old, alone, in the pitch black, a quarter of a mile beneath the surface of the earth. You reach out and touch the rough, cold wood of the door. You feel the gritty texture of the rock wall beside you. You sit down on the cold, damp ground, your back against the stone, and you wait. You wait for the sound of the first approaching coal tub, a sound that will be your only connection to the rest of the world. You are no longer descending, you have arrived, and your work, the patient, solitary and silent work of a trapper boy, has just begun. The silence that follows the deputy's departure is unlike any silence you have known on the surface. It is not merely the absence of sound. It is a presence in itself. It is a heavy, thick blanket that muffles the world and presses in on you from all sides. In this profound quiet, your other senses begin to awaken, to search the darkness for information. You feel the cold of the stone floor beginning to seep through the thin canvas of your trousers. A damp, persistent chill that will become a familiar companion for the rest of the day. You run your fingers over the wooden door beside you. The planks are rough, and you can feel the heads of the large iron nails that hold them together. You touch the rope. Its fibers are coarse and prickly against your skin. This rope is your tool, your responsibility, your only connection to your purpose here. And then, you begin to hear the mind's true sounds, the small, secret noises that are masked by the bustle of the world above. The first and most constant is the water. The drip, drip, drip you heard in the shaft is present here too. Somewhere down the tunnel, a steady bead of water is falling from the roof into a small puddle on the floor. It is a soft, rhythmic sound, a natural metronome marking the slow, immeasurable passage of time. It is the only clock you have. Drip, drip, drip. Each drop is a second, a minute, an hour. You have no way of knowing. Time itself begins to behave strangely in the darkness. Without the sun to mark its progress, without any tasks to fill it, the minutes stretch and warp. An hour can feel like a lifetime. A lifetime can pass in what feels like an hour. Your mind, starved of stimulation, begins to wander. You think of your mother's face in the gloom of the cottage this morning. You think of the small, smooth pebble you found by the river last summer, which you keep in a secret hiding place. You try to picture the sky, to remember what the color blue looks like. But the image is faint, a distant memory, and the overwhelming blackness in front of your eyes always wins. A new sound breaks the rhythm of the dripping water. It is a small, scratching, scuttling sound from somewhere down the tunnel, a rat. The mines are full of them, creatures as at home in the dark as you are forced to be. You freeze, your body tensing. The sound is a reminder that you are not the only living thing in the darkness, and the thought is not a comforting one. You pull your legs up to your chest, wrapping your arms around them, making yourself a smaller target. The scuttling sound fades, and you are alone again with the dripping water. But the sense of unease lingers. You fight to stay awake. The deputy's warning echoes in your mind. But the darkness, the silence, and the sheer mind-numbing boredom are a powerful sedative. Your head grows heavy, and your chin droops to your chest. You drift into a state of half-sleep, your thoughts becoming strange and dreamlike. You are jolted back to full consciousness by another sound, a low, deep creak from the timbers above you. It is the sound of the earth settling, a gentle, groaning reminder of the hundreds of feet of rock and soil that lie between you and the sky. The men say the mine is always talking. You are beginning to learn its language. And then a new sound begins. It is different from the others. It is not a sound of the mine itself, but a sound of its work. It begins as a faint, distant rumble, a vibration that you feel more in the stone floor than you hear with your ears. It is the sound you have been waiting for. It is the sound of an approaching tub. You are instantly alert. All sleepiness vanished. You press your ear against the cold, damp wood of the door, listening. The rumbling grows louder, becoming a distinct, gritty, clattering sound. It is the sound of iron wheels on an iron track. Soon, you can hear another sound layered over it. The heavy, rhythmic breathing of the hurrier. He is not just pushing the tub. He is harnessed to it, a leather strap around his chest, pulling the heavy load like a beast of burden. Your heart begins to beat faster. You must not be late. You fumble in the darkness for the rope, your fingers brushing against the cold stone before they find the familiar, coarse fibers. You grip it with both hands. The tub is close now. The clatter is loud, and you can hear the scrape of the hurrier's boots on the uneven floor. You brace your feet against the ground. Door. A voice shouts from the darkness. A rough, impatient grunt. You pull. The door is heavy, heavier than it looks. The hinges are stiff and grate in protest. It requires all of your 8-year-old strength. You lean back, your small body straining, your boots sliding a little on the muddy floor. Slowly, agonizingly, the door begins to swing open. For a brief, glorious moment, your world is filled with light. The hurrier has a small lamp, a simple tallow candle stuck in a lump of clay attached to the front of his tub. The light is dim, smoky, and flickering, but to your eyes, accustomed to absolute blackness, it is as dazzling as the sun. In that fleeting moment, you see the scene in stark detail. The low, black tunnel, the glint of the rails, the hulking shape of the coal tub, piled high with glistening black rock, and the hurrier himself. He is a boy of about 14, his face and bare torso black with coal dust, sweat carving clean, pale channels through the grime. His face is set in a mask of exhaustion and exertion, his eyes fixed on the tunnel ahead. He does not look at you. You are just a part of the mechanism. He plods past, the tub rumbling through the doorway. The brief gust of wind he creates smells of coal, sweat, and tallow smoke. As soon as the tub is clear, you let the rope go. The door swings shut with a heavy, solid thump, and you are plunged back into darkness. The sound of the tub recedes down the tunnel, the clatter growing fainter and fainter until it is once again swallowed by the silence. You are left with the after image of the light burned into your retinas, a ghostly green shape that slowly fades. And you are left with the knowledge that you have done your job. The door was opened. The coal is on its way to the surface. The ventilation of the mine is secure. This is the cycle of your day. Silence and darkness, broken by moments of frantic, focused activity. You do not know how many times you perform this task. 10 times, 20, 50, you lose count. The passage of time is marked only by the rhythm of the approaching and receding tubs. The work becomes automatic. Your ears become attuned to the faintest rumble. Your hands learn to find the rope in the dark without fumbling. Your body learns the precise amount of effort needed to move the heavy door. In the long, silent stretches between the tubs, you find small ways to occupy your mind, to fight off the immense, soul-crushing boredom. You trace the letters of your name in the dust on the floor, a name you cannot see but can feel. You quietly hum a tune your mother sometimes sings, the sound a tiny, brave rebellion against the overwhelming silence. You count the drips of water, trying to guess how many drips it will take for the next tub to arrive. You play little games with yourself, a silent, solitary child trying to keep his own mind for company. You are not a person, you are a component. You are a human hinge. Your purpose is singular, to open and to close this door. You are the guardian of the airway, the keeper of the passage. In the grand, complex machine of the colliery, you are one of the smallest, most hidden, but most essential parts. And as you sit in the cold and the dark, listening for the next distant rumble, you are performing your duty with the silent, unthinking patience that has been drilled into you. You are a trapper boy, and this is your world, a world of waiting and of work, deep in the quiet heart of the earth. Sometime in the vast unmarked territory of the middle of your shift, a change occurs. It is not a change in the light, for there is none. It is a change in the rhythm of the tubs. The steady, predictable flow of hurriers slows and then stops. A different kind of silence falls over the tunnel, a silence of expectation. This is the time for bait, the midday meal. No whistle blows to announce this break. No overseer comes to tell you to rest. The pause is simply an unspoken agreement, a brief, grudging concession to the needs of the human body. The machinery of the mine rests, and so do its people. You reach for the small bundle that the deputy left for you hours ago. Your fingers, stiff with cold, fumble with the knot in the cloth. You unwrap it, and in the darkness you feel the familiar shape of a lump of bread. It is hard and dry, made from coarse, dark flour. This is your entire meal. You bring it to your mouth, and the smell of it, earthy and slightly sour, fills your senses. You eat slowly, taking small, deliberate bites. You are not just eating, you are focusing on the act of eating, the texture of the rough crust in your mouth, the way the dry crumbs scratch your tongue, the simple, starchy taste. It is a sensory experience, a welcome distraction from the monotony of the darkness. You make the small piece of bread last as long as possible, chewing each mouthful until it becomes a soft paste. It does not fill your stomach, but it dulls the sharp ache of hunger that has been growing there for hours. As you eat, you wash it down with sips of cold, metallic-tasting water from the small flask your father gave you. The meal is a solitary affair. There is no one to talk to, no shared laughter. You sit on the coal floor, in the absolute blackness, and eat your dry bread. Your only companion, the steady, rhythmic dripping of water somewhere down the tunnel. It is a moment of rest, but it is a lonely, desolate kind of rest. Sometimes, during this midday lull, another child might appear out of the darkness. Perhaps a greaser boy, his own work also paused, might wander down the tunnel, his small lamp casting a welcome, flickering glow. These encounters are rare and brief. Conversation is conducted in low whispers. You do not talk about your fears or your loneliness. You talk about small, practical things. You might ask if the deputy has been seen nearby. You might share a rumor about a new seam of coal being opened. Or you might simply sit in companionable silence, the presence of another human being, a comfort in itself. In these quiet moments, you see the toll the work takes on the other children. The greaser boy's hands are coated in a thick black layer of fat and coal dust that will never truly wash clean. His face is pale and thin. His eyes, in the lamplight, seem too large for his head. You see older boys, the hurriers, resting against the tunnel walls, their chests heaving, their bodies slick with sweat despite the mine's chill. They look not like boys, but like miniature, exhausted old men. You witness small, quiet acts of care. An older hurrier might share a piece of his own meager meal with a younger trapper boy who has none. A boy might help another relight a lamp that has gone out. The sharing of a flame, a vital act of solidarity in the darkness. These are not grand gestures of heroism. They are small, instinctive acts of humanity, a quiet refusal to let the darkness and the crushing labor extinguish everything that makes you human. On very rare occasions, a different kind of visitor might appear. Not a miner, but a man from the world above. A mine inspector, or a member of a royal commission, sent to investigate the conditions of child labor. These visits are always announced in advance, and the mine is prepared for them. The most dangerous sections are closed off. The children are told to look clean and cheerful. You remember one such visit. The deputy had come to your door that morning and given you a stern warning. "A gentleman from London is coming today," he had said. When he speaks to you, you stand up. You tell him you like the work. You tell him you are well fed. You tell him the masters are kind. Do you understand? You had nodded, a knot of fear in your stomach. Later that day, 2 lights had appeared down the tunnel, one belonging to the deputy, the other to the inspector. The gentleman from London was tall, and he wore fine clothes that seemed entirely out of place in the grime and damp of the mine. He smelled of soap and clean wool, a scent so foreign it was startling. He had stopped at your door, peering at you in the lamplight. "And how old are you, my boy?" he had asked, his voice soft and kind, a stark contrast to the rough tones of the miners. "8, sir," you had whispered, just as you had been told. "And what is your name?" "Thomas, sir." "Do you like your work, Thomas?" the gentleman had asked. You had looked past him and seen the face of the deputy in the shadows, his eyes narrowed in a silent warning. "Yes, sir," you had said, your own voice sounding strange and small. "It's very important work, sir. I like helping." The gentleman had smiled, a sad, distant smile. He had asked a few more questions. "Do you get enough to eat?" To each question you had given the rehearsed, approved answer. He had then nodded, made a note in a small book he carried, and moved on, taking his clean smell and his kind voice with him. You were left alone in the darkness again, feeling a strange sense of shame, of having betrayed some unspoken truth. You knew that the words you had spoken were a lie, but you also knew that your survival depended on telling that lie. It was another lesson the mine taught you. The truth is a luxury that some people cannot afford. The midday pause ends as it began, without a signal. The distant, rumbling sound of the first tub of the afternoon shift begins, and the brief respite is over. You wrap the last small crumb of your bread back in its cloth, saving it for later, a tiny treasure to look forward to. You take your position by the door, your body tensing, ready to pull the rope. The rhythm of the mine reasserts itself, and you are once again a part of its machinery. The afternoon shift is harder than the morning. Your body is tired, your muscles ache. The initial novelty of the darkness has long worn off, replaced by a deep, bone-wearying monotony. The hunger in your stomach has returned, a dull, persistent ache. The cold seems to have seeped deeper into your bones, but you continue your work. You open the door, you close the door, you listen, you wait. The cycle is unbreakable. As the day wears on, you become more attuned to the subtle changes in the mine. The air becomes thicker, heavier with coal dust, and the exhalations of hundreds of men and boys. The temperature rises slightly, the heat from the bodies and the lamps creating a close, stagnant atmosphere. You learn to read these signs. You know, without knowing how you know, that the long day is beginning to turn, that the end of your shift is no longer an impossibly distant future, but a tangible, approaching reality. And in the oppressive darkness, that small, faint glimmer of hope is what keeps you going. You sit, you wait, you pull the rope, your world reduced to this one simple, repetitive task, your mind focused on the eventual, blessed release of returning to the surface. The midday rest is over, and the long, slow march towards twilight has begun. The end of the shift announces itself not with a sudden sound, but with a gradual fading of them. The flow of tubs, which had been a steady, rhythmic pulse throughout the long afternoon, begins to falter. The intervals between the rumbling carts grow longer, the silence in between deeper and more profound. This is the first sign. The great, insatiable hunger of the mine for coal is temporarily satisfied, and the machinery of its extraction is slowly grinding to a halt. You feel a change in the air itself, a subtle shift in the current, a sign that the ventilation patterns are being altered as the men prepare to leave the deep workings. You have been down here for so long that you can read these invisible tides. Then, a new sound begins, one you haven't heard since the early morning. The distant sound of men's voices. Not the grunted commands of the hurriers, but the low murmur of conversation. The hewers, the men who work at the coalface, including your father and brother, have finished their work. They are making their way back from the furthest reaches of the mine, their day's labour done. Their lights appear first, a collection of small bobbing stars in the far-off blackness, slowly growing larger. It is a welcome, beautiful sight, a constellation of hope moving through the subterranean night. As they draw closer, you can see their forms. They are no longer the men who descended this morning. They are creatures of the earth, their bodies, faces, and clothes entirely blackened, indistinguishable from the coal they have been carving. Only the whites of their eyes and their teeth stand out, stark and ghostly in the lamplight. They walk with a slow, deliberate shuffle, a gait born of utter exhaustion. Their shoulders are stooped, their heads bowed. They carry their heavy picks and shovels, the tools of their trade, which now seem like immense burdens. Your father and brother are among them. You recognize them not by their faces, which are hidden beneath a uniform mask of grime, but by your father's distinct, broad-shouldered silhouette and your brother's slightly taller frame. Your father stops beside you. "Thomas," he says, his voice thick and raspy with coal dust. "The day is done." He places a hand on your head, and you can feel the grit of the coal on his palm. It is a gesture of immense tenderness and weariness. You fall in alongside them, joining the slow, silent procession heading back towards the pit bottom. You are no longer a solitary guardian of a door. You are part of the retreating army, a small soldier on the long march home. The journey back through the labyrinth of tunnels seems quicker than the journey in. Your steps are lighter now, buoyed by the prospect of escape. You arrive at the pit bottom, the vast cavern at the base of the main shaft. It is now crowded with men and boys, a sea of blackened faces and exhausted bodies, all waiting patiently for their turn to ascend. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, coal, and stale lamp oil. The silence of the working day has been replaced by a low hum of tired voices, the sound of men too weary for loud conversation. You queue for the cage. The wait can be long. The cage can only hold a few men at a time, and there are hundreds to be brought to the surface. You sit on the floor, leaning against your father's leg. The exhaustion, held at bay during the long hours of your watch, now washes over you in a great heavy wave. Your eyelids feel like they have lead weights attached to them. You drift into a state of semi-consciousness, your head lolling, lulled by the murmur of voices and the rhythmic clanking of the winding gear far above. Finally, it is your turn. You are herded onto the cage with your father and a handful of other miners. The gate clangs shut, and with that familiar stomach-lurching jolt, you begin to rise. The ascent is the reverse of the morning's journey, but the feeling is entirely different. You are not descending into darkness, but rising towards the light. It is a journey of resurrection. As the cage climbs, you watch the small, square patch of light above you grow larger. It changes from a distant star to a grey square. And then, as you near the top, it resolves into the familiar shape of the headframe against the evening sky. The sky is no longer the pale, pre-dawn grey of the morning. It is a deeper, richer shade of twilight, bruised with purples and oranges. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. The cage bursts into the open air, and the sensory shock is immense. After 12 hours in the still, silent, and scentless world below, the surface is an assault on the senses. You feel the cool, fresh evening wind on your face, a glorious, clean caress. You smell the familiar scents of wood smoke and damp earth, scents you had forgotten existed. The world seems vast, open, and impossibly bright. Even in the fading light of dusk, you blink, your eyes watering, unaccustomed to this level of illumination. You step out of the cage onto the blackened earth of the pit head. The day's work is done, but the day is not yet over. There is the long walk home. You join the river of men and boys as it flows away from the mine, back towards the village. The walk home is different from the walk in the morning. Your legs are heavy with fatigue, your muscles aching with a deep, dull throb. Each step up the steep lanes of the village is an effort, but your spirit is lighter. You are out. You are free. The town is quieter now. The sounds of industry have fallen silent. The only noises are the clatter of boots on the cobblestones and the occasional cry of a child playing in the street. A child too young to work in the mine. You see your mother standing in the doorway of your cottage, a small, anxious figure waiting for the return of her family. The sight of her is a profound relief, a confirmation that you have all survived another day. You stumble into the single room of your home, and the exhaustion hits you with its full force. You collapse onto the bench, too tired to even speak. Your mother has a fire going in the small stove, and its warmth begins to seep into your chilled bones. A large pot of water is heating on top of it. This is for washing. There is no bathroom. A large wooden tub is brought into the middle of the room. Your father washes first. He strips off his blackened pit clothes, and your mother pours buckets of the hot water over him as he scrubs his body with a harsh, lye soap. The water in the tub quickly turns black. Then it is your brother's turn, and finally, yours. The water is no longer hot, merely lukewarm, and it is grey with the grime of your father and brother, but it feels wonderful. You scrub at your face, your hands, your arms, trying to remove the thick layer of coal dust, but you know that it is a futile task. The dust is in your paws, under your fingernails, in your hair. You will never be truly clean. After washing, it is time for the evening meal. This is the main meal of the day, and it is the moment the entire family looks forward to. Tonight, it is a thin stew of potatoes, turnips, and onions, with a small piece of bacon fat thrown in for flavour. There is no meat. Meat is a luxury for Sundays if you are lucky. Your mother ladles the stew into bowls. You eat ravenously, hunched over your bowl, scooping up the hot, soft vegetables with a piece of bread. The food is plain, but it is hot, and it fills the aching emptiness in your stomach. It is the most delicious thing you have ever tasted. After the meal, there is a brief period of quiet before sleep. There is no energy for games or conversation. Your father sits by the fire, his eyes closed, his breathing heavy. He is too tired to speak. Your mother cleans the bowls and prepares for the next day. Sometimes, if she is not too tired herself, she might sing a soft, sad ballad, her voice filling the small room with a gentle melody. You sit and listen, the warmth of the fire and the food making you drowsy. The events of the day, the darkness, the fear, the boredom, begin to fade, replaced by a deep, overwhelming need for sleep. You do not think about tomorrow. To think about tomorrow, about having to do it all over again, is unbearable. You focus only on this present moment of warmth, of safety, of a full stomach. Soon it is time for bed. You crawl onto the straw mattress, next to your sleeping siblings. You do not need to be told. Your body craves the oblivion of sleep. You pull the heavy blanket over you. The straw rustles beneath you, and you can smell the faint, clean scent of the lye soap on your skin. A temporary victory over the grime of the pit. You close your eyes, but the darkness behind your eyelids is not the peaceful black of sleep. It is the active, profound darkness of the mine. You can still hear the steady drip, drip, drip of the water. You can still feel the cold stone at your back. You can still see the ghostly after-image of the hurrier's lamp. The mine has marked you, not just on your skin, but on your soul. But sleep is a powerful, merciful force. Slowly, inevitably, it pulls you under. The sounds and images of the mine begin to fade, and you drift into a deep, dreamless slumber. It is the sleep of utter exhaustion. A temporary death before the pit whistle will cry out again in the darkness, summoning you to another day of labour in the heart of the earth. You sleep, and for a few short hours, you are not a worker, not a component in a machine. You are just a child at rest, and in the quiet, humble cottage, surrounded by your family. This small, fleeting peace is the only reward you will ever know. As the brief respite of the midday meal fades into memory, and the rhythm of the tubs resumes its steady, rumbling beat, your attention shifts. The deep, weary ache in your muscles and the dull hunger in your stomach are constant companions. But another awareness sharpens as the day wears on. It is an awareness of the mine itself, not as a workplace, but as a living, breathing, and profoundly dangerous entity. The men do not speak of it often, but this awareness is woven into the fabric of their every action. A silent, unspoken understanding that governs their movements and their thoughts. It is the knowledge that their lives are perpetually balanced on a knife's edge, that the solid rock surrounding them is not as solid as it seems, and that the air they breathe can, in an instant, become their enemy. This is a world of quiet peril. The dangers are rarely sudden or dramatic. They do not often announce themselves with a great roar or a flash of light. More often, they arrive as a whisper, a subtle change in the environment that only the most experienced and watchful would notice. For you, as a trapper boy, sitting alone in your solitary darkness, this education in peril comes from listening. You listen to the sounds the mine makes when it is empty, and you learn to distinguish its normal voice from its warning tones. The most constant sound, after the dripping of water, is the creaking of the wooden props that hold up the roof. These massive timbers, felled from ancient forests and hauled into the depths, are under an almost unimaginable pressure. They are the only things standing between the tunnels and the crushing weight of the earth above. Throughout the day, they groan and sigh like living creatures in pain. It is a sound the miners call the talking of the roof. A new boy might find this sound terrifying, each creak a prelude to being buried alive. But you are learning, through observation and the calm demeanor of the men who pass you, that most of this talking is normal. The earth is always settling, shifting by fractions of an inch. The props are simply doing their job, bearing the immense load. But sometimes the sound changes. A steady, low groan might sharpen into a sudden, high-pitched crack. A shower of small pebbles and dust might fall from the roof. A soft, dry, whispering sound in the darkness. These are the warnings. This is the mind telling you that the pressure in a certain spot has become too great, that a timber is beginning to splinter, that the rock is beginning to fail. When the hurriers hear this, they do not shout or run. They simply move a little faster, their bodies tensing, their eyes scanning the roof in the flickering light of their lamps. They know that a small fall of rock could block a tunnel, and a large one could mean a swift and final end. They live with this knowledge every moment of every day. A quiet, fatalistic acceptance that is the hallmark of the career miner. Then there are the dangers you cannot hear or see. The air itself is a constant, invisible threat. You have heard the men talk in hushed tones of the damps. They are not speaking of moisture, but of the deadly gases that seep from the coal seams themselves. The most feared is the fire damp, the name given to methane gas. It is odorless, colorless, and lighter than air, and when it mixes with the oxygen in the right concentration, it becomes incredibly explosive. A single naked flame, a spark from a pickaxe striking a hard piece of rock, could be enough to ignite it, creating a devastating fireball that would sweep through the tunnels, consuming everything and everyone in its path. This is why the safety lamp, invented by Sir Humphrey Davy, is the most sacred object in the mine. Your father's lamp, and the lamps of all the hewers and deputies, is not just a source of light. It is a sophisticated piece of scientific equipment, a sentinel against this unseen enemy. You have watched your father tend to his lamp with a reverence usually reserved for holy relics. He has shown you how it works. The flame is enclosed within a cylinder of fine wire gauze. This gauze allows the air to enter and feed the flame, but it cools the hot gases of the flame so that they cannot ignite any fire damp outside the lamp. It is a simple, ingenious principle, a delicate membrane of metal that separates life from death. But the lamp does more than just prevent explosions. It warns of them. The men are taught to read the language of the flame. In pure air, the flame burns with a steady yellow light. But if fire damp is present, the flame changes, it elongates, stretching upwards, and a faint pale blue halo, a corpse light the old men call it, appears at its tip. The higher the concentration of the gas, the larger and more pronounced this blue cap becomes. The deputies, as part of their rounds, will often raise their lamps towards the ceiling, where the lighter methane gas accumulates, and watch the flame with an intense, focused gaze. If they see the cap, they know the ventilation is failing, that the gas is building up, and that the men must be evacuated from that section immediately. Every miner, from the oldest hewer to the youngest hurrier with his own small candle, understands this quiet, constant ritual of watching the flame, a silent, ongoing conversation with the treacherous air. There is another, equally insidious gas, known as black damp or stithe. It is a mixture of nitrogen and carbon dioxide, and it is heavier than air, so it pools in the low-lying parts of the mine, in the dips and hollows of the tunnel floors. It is not explosive. Its danger lies in what it is not. It is not oxygen. A man can walk into a pocket of black damp without realizing it. The first sign is a dimming of his lamp flame, as the fire is starved of the oxygen it needs to burn. The next sign is a shortness of breath, a tightness in the chest, a growing feeling of light-headedness and lethargy. It does not kill with violence, but with a gentle, suffocating embrace. A man caught in it might simply feel tired, sit down to rest for a moment, and never get up again. The deputies test for it by lowering their lamps towards the floor. If the flame flickers and dies, they know the air is unbreathable, that the pocket must be cleared with improved ventilation before any man can work there. And then there is the water. The constant, rhythmic dripping is a sound you have become accustomed to, but it is a constant reminder of another peril. The mine is a deep wound in the earth, and like any wound, it is always trying to fill with water. The mine is a network of pumps, drains, and channels, a complex system designed to carry this water away and keep the workings dry. But sometimes the system fails. A pump might break down, or a hewer's pickaxe. In the deep darkness of the coal face, might break through into a forgotten, flooded older working, or into a natural underground reservoir. The danger is not usually a sudden, dramatic flood that roars through the tunnels. It is often a slow, steady, and inexorable rise. A section of tunnel that was merely damp in the morning might be ankle-deep in water by the afternoon. An area that was ankle-deep might become waist-deep. For the men and boys working in the lower levels of the mine, a rising water level can be a death sentence. It can cut off their only route of escape, trapping them in a shrinking pocket of air, the water rising slowly, coldly, and inevitably in the darkness. The fear of being trapped, of a watery grave in the heart of the earth, is a primal fear that lives in the heart of every miner. These great elemental dangers, falls, gas and floods, are the backdrop to a host of smaller, more mundane risks. The work is physically punishing and accidents are common. A boy hurrying with his heavy tub might slip on the uneven, greasy rails and be crushed between the cart and the tunnel wall. A man swinging his pick in a cramped space might miss the coal seam and strike his own leg. The air, thick with fine, sharp particles of coal dust, gets into the lungs, causing the persistent, rattling cough that is the universal ailment of the miners, a disease that will, for many of them, eventually progress to the debilitating and deadly condition they call black lung. Life in the mine is a constant negotiation with risk. The children learn this negotiation from their first day. They learn to listen to the creaking of the roof. They learn to glance at the flame of a passing lamp. They learn to test the depth of a puddle with their foot before wading in. They develop a sixth sense, a kind of animal instinct for the moods and dangers of the world below. It is this instinct, more than any rule or any overseer, that keeps them alive. As you sit at your door, in your solitary darkness, you are not just waiting for the next tub. You are listening. You are learning. You are absorbing the unwritten rules of survival. You are becoming a miner, a creature of the deep earth. Your senses honed to a fine, sharp point by the constant, quiet presence of peril. And this education, written in darkness and fear, is the most important and the most terrifying part of your long working day. The final hours of the shift are a slow, grinding torment. The brief respite of the midday meal is a distant memory, and the deep, gnawing ache of hunger has returned with a vengeance. Your body, which ran on a small reserve of energy in the morning, is now running on empty. A profound, bone-deep weariness has settled over you. A physical and mental exhaustion so complete that it feels like a heavy cloak. Each time you pull the rope to open your door, the effort seems to require a monumental act of will. Your muscles burn, your back aches, and your small hands are raw and chafed from the coarse fibers of the rope. In the long, silent stretches between the tubs, the darkness plays tricks on your tired mind. The familiar dripping water begins to sound like whispering voices. The shadows thrown by a distant passing lamp seem to twist into monstrous, menacing shapes. The sheer, unrelenting monotony of your task, combined with the sensory deprivation, creates a state of near hypnosis. You find yourself drifting, your thoughts becoming untethered, floating in a grey, timeless void. The line between waking and dreaming begins to blur. You might suddenly jerk awake, unsure if you have been asleep for a moment or for an hour, a surge of panic flooding you as you wonder if you have missed a tub. But as the day crawls towards its inevitable conclusion, a new set of sounds and sensations begins to filter through the darkness, signaling the beginning of the end. The first sign is a change in the flow of traffic. The rumbling of the loaded tubs moving towards the pit bottom begins to cease. Instead, you hear the clatter of empty tubs being returned to the workings for the last time. Then, even that sound fades, replaced by a different kind of human noise. It is the sound of the men and boys of the day shift gathering their tools. You hear the clank of a shovel being picked up, the thud of a pickaxe being shouldered. These are the sounds of packing up, the sounds of retreat. A new kind of light begins to penetrate your world. It is not the single fleeting lamp of a passing hurrier. It is a cluster of lights, a small constellation of bobbing flames moving slowly and steadily towards you from the deep workings. It is the hewers, the diggers, the men from the coalface, their long, arduous shift finally over. Your father and your brother are among them. Their approach is the signal you have been waiting for all day, a confirmation that your own solitary vigil is at an end. You join them, a small, tired shadow falling into step beside the larger, equally exhausted shadows of your family. You are now part of a slow, shuffling procession, a silent, retreating army of blackened men and boys, making their way back through the labyrinth of tunnels towards the pit bottom. There is little conversation. The men are too weary for talk. The only sounds are the shuffle of boots on the rocky floor, the clink of tools, and the collective rasping sound of dozens of men breathing air thick with coal dust. The journey to the pit bottom, which seemed so long and frightening in the morning, feels blessedly short on the return. The sight of the main shaft, with its high timbered roof and the dark gaping maw of the cage, is a vision of hope. The area is crowded now, a vast subterranean congregation of the day's workforce. You huddle together, waiting your turn for the ascent. The air is warm and close, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, and lamp oil. But no one minds. The shared discomfort is a sign of shared survival. The wait for the cage can be long and tedious. There are hundreds of men and boys to be ferried to the surface, and the cage can only carry a small number at a time. You find a space on the floor, leaning against your father's legs, and you allow the profound exhaustion to wash over you. You doze in fits and starts, your head nodding against your chest, lulled by the low murmur of the waiting crowd and the rhythmic clank and hiss of the winding engine far above. Finally, a deputy shouts your father's name, and you are herded towards the cage. You cram in with a half-dozen other men, your small body pressed between them. The gate clangs shut, a sound of finality, and with a sudden, stomach-lurching jolt, the cage begins to rise. The ascent is a journey of glorious, silent transformation. You are leaving the world of darkness, of pressure, of stale air. You are rising towards the light, towards the sky, towards life. You watch the small square of light above you grow. A single, pale star expanding into a window. It is a slow, steady, and beautiful process. The air grows cooler and cleaner with every foot you rise. Then, with a final gentle bump, the cage breaks through into the surface world. The transition is a shock to your system. After 12 hours in the dark, the fading light of the evening sky seems incredibly, painfully bright. You squeeze your eyes shut, and when you open them again, the world is a wash of blurry color. The sky is a deep, bruised purple, streaked with the last fiery vestiges of the sunset. It is the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. A masterpiece of color and light that you had forgotten could exist. The air is another revelation. You take a deep breath, and your lungs are filled not with the dead, mineral scent of the mine, but with the cool, damp, living scent of the evening. You can smell the wet earth, the wood smoke from the cottage chimneys, the faint green smell of the hardy grasses that grow on the hillside. It is the smell of home. You step out of the cage, your legs unsteady, and join the great black river of men and boys flowing away from the pit head. The walk home is an exercise in endurance. Your muscles scream in protest. Your legs feel as heavy as the iron rails you have worked beside all day. Each step up the steep cobbled lanes of the village is a small, painful victory. But your heart is light. The shift is over. You have survived. You see your mother waiting in the doorway of your cottage. A small, anxious figure silhouetted against the warm, flickering light from within. The sight of her, the sight of home, gives you the last burst of energy you need. You stumble through the door and collapse onto the nearest bench. The exhaustion so complete, it is almost a physical blow. The evening routine is a welcome, comforting ritual. The fire in the stove radiates a blissful warmth that begins to chase the deep chill from your bones. Your mother has heated water, and you take your turn in the wooden tub, the lukewarm, grimy water feeling like a blessed baptism, washing away the outer layers of the day's toil. You know the dust will remain in your skin, in your lungs, but for a moment, you feel almost clean. Then comes the meal, a simple, thin stew of root vegetables, perhaps with a small piece of salted pork for flavor. To you, it is a feast. You devour it, the hot food filling the aching void in your stomach, sending waves of warmth and comfort through your weary body. You eat in silence, too tired for words, the only sound the scraping of spoons against the earthenware bowls. After the meal, there is a brief, precious interlude before sleep claims you. Your father sits by the fire, his eyes closed, his face, even after washing, still smudged with a faint grey shadow of coal dust. He is a man worn down by years of this relentless labor, a man whose strength is slowly being ground away by the earth itself. Your mother moves quietly about the room, cleaning, mending, her work never truly done. You sit, your body aching, your mind a dull, empty space. You are too tired to think, too tired to feel much of anything beyond a profound gratitude for this moment of rest, of warmth, of safety. You are home. You are with your family. You have survived. Soon the overwhelming need for sleep becomes irresistible. You do not need to be told to go to bed. Your body cries out for it. You crawl onto your straw palliasse, the familiar rustle, a comforting sound. You pull the heavy, scratchy blanket up to your chin and you close your eyes. The darkness behind your eyelids is the deep, peaceful black of exhaustion, not the menacing, watchful black of the mine. The day is finally, truly over. You surrender to sleep. A sweet, dark tide that pulls you under, washing away the aches, the fears, the monotony of your long day. For a few brief, blessed hours, you are not a trapper boy, not a cog in a vast industrial machine. You are just a child, safe in your bed, lost in the deep, dreamless sleep of the utterly exhausted. And in this small, crowded room, in the heart of a grimy, hard-working town, this temporary oblivion is the only peace you will ever know. The pit whistle will sound again all too soon, but for now, you are at rest.